Push yourself to be happy. Every day. Have you ever noticed that the advice to be happy, the specific instruction to push yourself toward happiness as though happiness were a destination that sufficient effort and sufficient intention could reliably produce, is advice that arrives most insistently from the people and the systems and the cultural frameworks that have the most to gain from your believing that happiness is both urgently necessary and perpetually just out of reach, that the industries organized around the production of happiness, the wellness industry and the self-help industry and the pharmaceutical industry and the social media platforms that measure their success in engagement metrics that are themselves organized around the specific emotional states that keep people most continuously and most compulsively returning for the next dose of whatever the platform is providing, share a specific and rarely examined interest in your understanding happiness as something that requires constant active pursuit rather than as something that emerges, when it genuinely emerges, from conditions that are almost perfectly antithetical to the conditions that constant active pursuit produces? And have you ever sat with the specific discomfort of noticing that the more urgently and the more deliberately you have pursued happiness in the specific forms that the surrounding culture has made available as its most reliable sources, the specific forms of achievement and recognition and consumption and optimized experience and social validation, the less consistently and the less durably happy you have actually been? That the moments of genuine happiness that you can identify in the honest retrospective examination of your own experience were not, for the most part, the moments of maximum achievement or maximum consumption or maximum social recognition, but were more frequently the moments of specific and unremarkable circumstances, a particular quality of light on a particular afternoon, a conversation with a particular person that had no agenda and no destination, the specific absorption of genuine engagement with something genuinely interesting, the specific relief of a genuine laugh shared with someone you genuinely love, all of which arrived not as the product of their deliberate pursuit but as the specific consequence of conditions that had nothing to do with pushing yourself toward them. If you have noticed this, you have stumbled upon one of the most important and most consistently avoided insights available about the nature of genuine happiness and the specific relationship between the pursuit of happiness and its actual achievement. The insight is not comfortable because it cuts directly against the grain of the entire cultural apparatus that has been organized around the production and the sale of the specific experience of being almost happy, of being on the verge of happiness, of being one more achievement or one more purchase or one more optimization or one more morning routine away from the genuine arrival at the state that all the effort has been organized to produce. The insight is this: pushing yourself to be happy, in the specific sense that the dominant culture of the current era promotes, is not the path to genuine happiness. It is, with a consistency and a comprehensiveness that the research on this subject has documented with remarkable precision, one of the primary obstacles to it. And understanding why this is, understanding the specific mechanism through which the deliberate pursuit of happiness undermines the conditions of its own genuine achievement, is not merely an interesting philosophical observation. It is one of the most practically important understandings available for navigating the specific conditions of the current moment, in which the pressure toward the performance of happiness and the urgency of the pursuit of happiness and the specific shame of being insufficiently happy in a world that has made happiness the primary measure of the value of a human life are producing, with increasing comprehensiveness and increasing visibility, an epidemic of the specific forms of suffering that the relentless pursuit of happiness most reliably generates. Let me begin where the genuine understanding of happiness has always had to begin, with the question of what happiness actually is, because the confusion about its nature is the primary source of the confusion about how it is most reliably achieved, and the confusion about its nature is not accidental. It is the specific product of a culture that has an enormous stake in maintaining the confusion, because the clarity about what happiness actually is tends to point toward conditions of its achievement that are not organized around the continuous consumption and the continuous pursuit and the continuous engagement with the systems of provision and validation that the happiness industry is organized to provide. Happiness, in the sense that the dominant culture promotes as the primary goal of human life and the primary measure of human success, is primarily understood as a specific emotional state, a state of positive feeling, of pleasure and enjoyment, and the specific absence of negative feeling that is the direct consequence of specific external circumstances and that therefore can be reliably produced by the manipulation of those external circumstances in the direction of maximum positive feeling and minimum negative feeling. In this understanding, happiness is what you feel when the right things are happening, when the achievements are occurring and the relationships are satisfying and the body is functioning optimally and the social recognition is at the right level and the consumption of the right experiences and the right products is producing the right quality of immediate positive sensation. This understanding of happiness is not entirely wrong. External circumstances do genuinely affect the quality of felt experience. And the pursuit of external conditions that are genuinely conducive to genuine well-being is not a mistaken activity, but it is incomplete in a way that is so fundamentally consequential that the incompleteness constitutes a form of error rather than simply a form of partial truth. It is incomplete because it treats happiness as primarily an external problem to be solved through the manipulation of external circumstances rather than as primarily an internal condition to be cultivated through the development of specific inner capacities. And it is incomplete because it treats happiness as primarily a state of positive feeling rather than as primarily a quality of genuine engagement with the full reality of one's own life. The research that has accumulated over the last several decades on the nature of genuine well-being, the research that comes not from the happiness industry, which has an obvious interest in the external circumstances version of happiness, but from the psychology and neuroscience and philosophy of well-being that has been attempting to understand the genuine conditions of genuine human flourishing rather than the conditions of maximum immediate positive sensation, consistently points towards something more complex and more demanding and more genuinely interesting than the dominant cultural version of happiness acknowledges. It points towards the understanding that the people who are most genuinely happy in the deep and durable sense rather than the shallow and transient sense are not primarily the people whose external circumstances are most consistently positive. They are the people who have developed specific inner capacities that allow them to engage with the full range of their experience, including the genuinely difficult and the genuinely painful, and the genuinely uncertain dimensions of it, in ways that produce the specific quality of genuine engagement with genuine life that genuine happiness actually consists of. These capacities are not the capacities that the pushing yourself to be happy culture promotes. They are not the capacities for the management of negative feeling through the production of positive feeling. They are not the capacities for the optimization of external circumstances in the direction of maximum positive sensation. They are the capacities for genuine presence with what is actually happening in one's own experience, for the specific quality of honest and compassionate engagement with the full reality of one's own life that allows that reality in all its genuine difficulty and its genuine beauty and its genuine uncertainty and its genuine preciousness to be genuinely inhabited rather than continuously managed and curated in the direction of the specific emotional states that the culture has decided constitute happiness. To understand what this means concretely, I want to examine the specific mechanism through which pushing yourself to be happy undermines the conditions of genuine happiness, because the mechanism is both precise and counterintuitive in ways that make it worth understanding carefully rather than simply accepting as a general principle. The mechanism begins with a basic feature of human psychology that the research on emotional experience has documented so consistently that it has achieved the status of one of the most robust findings in the entire field. The deliberate pursuit of a specific emotional state, the specific intention of producing or maintaining a particular feeling as the goal of one's activity, tends to produce a quality of self-monitoring and self-evaluation that is itself incompatible with the genuine experiencing of the emotional state being pursued. The person who is trying to be happy, who is actively monitoring their own emotional state for evidence of happiness and finding it insufficient and redirecting their activity toward the production of more of it, is a person who is in a fundamentally different relationship with their own experience than the person who is genuinely happy. Because the genuine happiness requires a specific quality of unself-conscious absorption in what is actually happening that the self-monitoring of the pursuit of happiness specifically and consistently prevents. This is sometimes called the observer effect in the context of emotional experience, the specific way in which the observation of an emotional state changes the state being observed, and it is one of the reasons why genuine happiness so consistently and so perversely eludes the people who are most determinedly pursuing it, while arriving uninvited and unexpected in the moments when the people experiencing it were not thinking about whether they were happy at all. The second dimension of the mechanism is the specific relationship between the pursuit of happiness and the experience of its absence. The deliberate and effortful pursuit of any emotional state requires, as a prerequisite, the specific recognition that the emotional state is currently absent or insufficient. The person who is pushing themselves to be happy is a person who has, at the moment of the pushing, identified their current state as insufficiently happy, as a state that requires correction through the application of specific effort in the direction of the desired state. And this identification, this specific act of recognizing one's current state as insufficiently happy, is itself an act that amplifies the experience of the insufficiency it is recognizing, because the attention directed at the gap between the current state and the desired state consistently makes the gap feel larger and more significant than it would feel in the absence of that attention. This is the specific mechanism through which the culture of pushing yourself to be happy reliably produces the specific epidemic of unhappiness that it is ostensibly designed to address. The continuous cultural pressure toward happiness, the continuous social measurement of the adequacy of one's happiness, the continuous availability of comparison points that make one's current happiness feel insufficient relative to the apparently superior happiness of the people and the lifestyles and the consumption options being displayed on every available screen is a continuous amplification of the specific experience of insufficient happiness that it is claiming to address. The more insistently the culture demands happiness, and the more comprehensively it provides comparisons that make current happiness feel inadequate, the more consistently and the more pervasively the specific experience of insufficient happiness is being produced in the people the culture is most insistently addressing. The third dimension of the mechanism is the one that connects the psychology of individual happiness to the broader conditions of the current historical moment that we have been examining throughout the series of conversations of which this is a part. The specific forms of happiness that the dominant culture of the current era promotes as the most reliable and most legitimate sources of genuine happiness, the happiness of achievement and recognition and consumption and optimized experience and social validation, are forms whose relationship to the actual conditions of genuine human flourishing is, with increasing consistency and increasing visibility, being revealed by the actual experience of the people pursuing them as far more attenuated and far more unreliable than the cultural promotion of them suggests. The research on the relationship between income and happiness, the research that has been conducted with increasing methodological sophistication over the last several decades, consistently finds that beyond a relatively modest threshold of material adequacy, increases in income and consumption produce almost no increase in the deep and durable quality of genuine well-being. The research on the relationship between achievement and happiness finds that the specific period of peak happiness associated with a specific achievement is brief, that the return to the hedonic baseline that preceded the achievement is faster and more complete than most people anticipate before the achievement occurs, and that the next achievement required to produce a comparable quality of positive feeling is consistently larger and more difficult than the previous one. The research on the relationship between social recognition and happiness, the research that has examined what the specific experience of receiving the likes and the followers and the social media engagement that the current culture treats as a significant source of valid happiness actually produces in the sustained quality of felt well-being, finds that the relationship is negative rather than positive for a significant proportion of the people most regularly engaging in its pursuit. These findings are not pleasant, and the culture has developed a remarkable variety of strategies for avoiding or dismissing them, strategies that range from the simple assertion that more is always better to the sophisticated argument that the research is measuring the wrong things to the pragmatic observation that even if the research is right, there is nothing else to pursue. But the findings are consistent and they are robust, and they are pointing toward a conclusion that the genuine understanding of happiness has been pointing toward for as long as the genuine understanding of happiness has been available, which is that genuine happiness is not primarily the product of the external circumstances that the culture most vigorously promotes as its sources. So what is it actually the product of? What are the genuine conditions of genuine happiness in the specific sense, the deep and durable sense, rather than the shallow and transient sense that the research and the philosophical traditions and the honest examination of the most reliably happy lives in actual human history consistently identify? The first and most fundamental is what I want to call genuine presence, and I want to distinguish this from the various therapeutic and meditative uses of the term that have become so thoroughly absorbed into the wellness culture that the word has lost much of its genuine meaning through overuse. Genuine presence, as a condition of genuine happiness, is not a technique or a practice in the narrow sense. It is the specific quality of being actually in one's own experience, rather than somewhere else in relation to it. The specific quality of the full sensory and cognitive and emotional engagement with what is actually happening in the specific moment being lived, rather than the continuous partial engagement with the current moment. That the management of the digital life and the management of the performance of the self and the management of the comparison of one's own experience with the experiences of others that the current information environment reliably produces. The research on the relationship between mind-wandering and happiness is among the most striking and most consistently misunderstood findings in the entire field. A large-scale study that tracked people's moment-to-moment emotional states and the content of their attention found that people reported being significantly less happy when their minds were wandering, when they were thinking about something other than what they were currently doing, than when they were fully engaged with their current activity, regardless of what that activity was. People were less happy while mind-wandering during pleasant activities than they were while fully present during neutral or even mildly unpleasant activities. The conclusion of the researchers, stated directly in the title of the paper, was that a wandering mind is an unhappy mind. This finding is striking because it runs against the intuitive assumption that happiness is primarily determined by the valence of what one is experiencing, by whether what is happening is pleasant or unpleasant, rather than by the quality of one's engagement with what is happening. But it is consistent with a vast range of other findings about the relationship between genuine engagement and genuine well-being, and it is consistent with the most reliable reports of genuine happiness that people who have lived genuinely happy lives most consistently offer when asked to describe the conditions of their happiness. They consistently point not to the extraordinarily positive valence of their external circumstances, but to the specific quality of genuine engagement with the ordinary circumstances of their ordinary lives that characterize their most genuinely happy periods. The implication of this for the pushing yourself to be happy project is direct and uncomfortable. The deliberate pursuit of happiness through the management of external circumstances, the continuous scanning of the horizon of experience for the next thing that will produce the right quality of positive feeling is itself a specific and highly effective form of mind-wandering, a specific and highly effective form of being somewhere else in relation to the current moment, and therefore a specific and highly effective form of the condition that the research most consistently identifies as incompatible with genuine happiness. The pursuit of happiness is, in this precise sense, one of the primary mechanisms through which genuine happiness is prevented from arising. The second condition of genuine happiness is what I want to call genuine engagement, and I mean this in the specific technical sense that the research on flow and optimal experience has developed over the last several decades. Genuine engagement, in this sense, is the specific quality of involvement with an activity that is sufficiently challenging to require genuine effort and genuine attention, but not so challenging as to produce the specific anxiety that genuine overwhelm generates. The specific quality of absorption in an activity that is stretching the genuine capacities of the person engaged in it in ways that feel not like the management of difficulty, but like the genuine exercise of genuine capability. The research on this specific quality of engagement associated most prominently with the work of the psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, is among the most consistent and most practically important bodies of research available on the genuine conditions of genuine happiness. It consistently finds that the quality of happiness that people report during periods of genuine engagement, of what Csikszentmihalyi calls flow, is significantly higher than the quality of happiness they report during periods of passive consumption or effortless pleasure, or the management of comfortable circumstances that require no genuine stretching of genuine capacity. People are, with remarkable consistency, genuinely happier when they are genuinely engaged than when they are merely enjoying, and genuinely happier when they are producing than when they are consuming, and genuinely happier when they are in the specific state of being fully absorbed in something genuinely challenging than when they are in the specific state of having nothing genuinely challenging to be absorbed by. This finding is consistently counterintuitive to the people who encounter it for the first time, because the dominant understanding of happiness as primarily a state of positive feeling suggests that the most happiness should be associated with the most immediate positive feeling and the least effort and the maximum comfortable passivity. But the finding is extraordinarily robust, and it is consistent with the genuine experience of the most genuinely happy people whose lives have been most carefully examined, who consistently report that the most genuinely happy periods of their lives were characterized not by the absence of challenge, but by the specific quality of genuine engagement with genuine challenge that the flow state most precisely describes. The implication for the pushing yourself to be happy project is again direct and uncomfortable. The specific form of pushing that the dominant culture promotes, the pushing toward the experiences and the achievements and the recognitions that are supposed to produce the positive feeling that constitutes happiness, is not the pushing that the research on genuine happiness most consistently identifies as productive. The productive pushing is the pushing toward genuine challenge, toward the specific activities and the specific engagements and the specific relationships that require the genuine stretching of genuine capacity and that therefore produce the specific quality of absorbed, unself-conscious, genuine engagement that the research most consistently identifies as the experiential core of genuine happiness. The third condition of genuine happiness is genuine connection. And I want to be very precise about what I mean, because the word connection has been so thoroughly absorbed by the language of digital social engagement that it now refers primarily to a form of social contact that is, with remarkable consistency, less productive of genuine happiness than the word suggests and than the culture organized around its production claims. Genuine connection as a condition of genuine happiness is the specific quality of being genuinely known by and genuinely knowing another person. The specific experience of mutual recognition that occurs in the encounter between two people who are genuinely present with each other in their full complexity and their full vulnerability rather than in the managed presentation of their most acceptable dimensions. The research on the relationship between social connection and happiness is among the most consistent in the entire field, finding that the quality of social connection is among the strongest predictors of genuine well-being across cultures, across historical periods, across age groups, and across virtually every other variable that has been examined. But the specific quality of social connection that the research identifies as most productive of genuine happiness is not the quantity of social contact or the breadth of the social network, or the frequency of social interaction. It is the depth and the quality of genuine mutual knowledge and genuine mutual care in a small number of relationships that allow the full self, rather than the curated self, to be genuinely seen and genuinely accepted. The research consistently finds that a single relationship of genuine depth and genuine quality is more productive of genuine happiness than any number of relationships of shallow engagement, and that the specific feeling of genuine belonging, of being genuinely known by specific other people who genuinely care about the full reality of who you are rather than the performance of it, is among the most reliable and most consistent sources of the deep and durable quality of genuine happiness that the culture of social media engagement is most consistently and most comprehensively failing to provide. The fourth condition of genuine happiness is what I want to call genuine meaning, by which I mean the specific quality of understanding one's actions and one's choices and one's investments of time and energy as contributions to something that matters beyond the immediate mechanics of personal experience and personal satisfaction. The research on the relationship between meaning and happiness is complex and sometimes paradoxical, because the pursuit of meaning, unlike the pursuit of pleasure, is often associated with the voluntary acceptance of difficulty and sacrifice and the specific forms of engagement with the suffering of others that immediate positive feeling is not typically productive of. But the research consistently finds that people who understand their lives as genuinely meaningful are significantly happier, in the deep and durable sense, than people who understand their lives as primarily organized around the pursuit of their own pleasure and satisfaction, even when the latter are experiencing more immediate positive feeling than the former. The paradox of meaning and happiness, the specific finding that the acceptance of difficulty and sacrifice in the service of genuine meaning produces more genuine happiness than the avoidance of difficulty in the service of immediate pleasure, is among the most important and most consistently counterintuitive findings in the entire field of well-being research. And it is among the most thoroughly obscured by the dominant culture of pushing yourself to be happy, because the dominant culture has organized itself around the understanding of happiness as primarily about feeling good rather than about living well, which are not only different things but things that are, in the research, consistently inversely related in the specific conditions that the dominant culture is most vigorously promoting. The fifth condition of genuine happiness is the one that the entire culture of pushing yourself to be happy is most specifically and most comprehensively organized to deny, and that is the acceptance of genuine unhappiness as a legitimate and even necessary dimension of a genuinely lived human life. This is perhaps the most important insight available about the genuine conditions of genuine happiness, and it is the one that requires the most careful handling because it is the most easily misread as a counsel of resignation or a romanticization of suffering or a failure to take seriously the genuine obligation to address the specific sources of suffering that are genuinely addressable. The acceptance of genuine unhappiness as a legitimate and necessary dimension of a genuinely lived human life is not the acceptance of preventable suffering as inevitable. It is not the resignation of a person who has given up on the genuine improvement of the conditions of their own life or the conditions of the world they inhabit. It is the specific recognition that the full range of human emotional experience, including the genuinely difficult and the genuinely painful and the genuinely sad, and the genuinely anxious dimensions of it, is not a set of problems to be solved or states to be corrected or experiences to be managed away from in the direction of the more comfortable alternatives. It is the actual texture of a genuinely lived human life, and the attempt to eliminate it through the continuous pushing toward positive states is not the path to genuine happiness, but one of the most reliable paths away from it. The research on the relationship between the acceptance of negative emotional states and genuine well-being is among the most striking and most consistently misunderstood findings in the field. People who accept their negative emotional states as legitimate features of their experience rather than problems requiring immediate correction tend, with remarkable consistency, to be significantly happier over time than people who treat their negative emotional states as problems to be solved and who invest significant effort in the management and the suppression and the conversion of those states into more positive alternatives. The mechanism is not mysterious when it is understood. The acceptance of negative emotional states reduces the specific experience of meta-suffering, the suffering about the suffering, the anxiety about the anxiety, the unhappiness about the unhappiness, that the attempt to suppress or manage negative emotional states reliably produces in addition to the negative states themselves. And the reduction of meta-suffering is, in the research, associated with a much more significant improvement in overall well-being than the improvement in the management of the primary negative states themselves. This is the specific dimension of the culture of pushing yourself to be happy that is most directly and most consequentially harmful. The insistence that negative emotional states are problems requiring correction, that the experience of sadness or anxiety or grief or loneliness or the specific forms of existential discomfort that genuine engagement with the genuine conditions of a human life reliably produces is evidence of insufficient happiness that requires the immediate application of specific corrective interventions, is an insistence that reliably amplifies the suffering it is trying to address rather than reducing it, and the specific cultural shame that accompanies the failure to be sufficiently happy. The specific social judgment of the person who is sad or anxious or lost or empty as a person who is not doing happiness correctly, as a person who needs to try harder or optimize better or find the right resource or the right practice or the right pharmaceutical intervention to correct the failure, is one of the most consistent and most consequential sources of additional suffering that the culture of pushing yourself to be happy is actively producing in the people it most insistently addresses. Now I want to examine what a genuine alternative to the culture of pushing yourself to be happy looks like, because the critique of the dominant approach is only genuinely useful if it is accompanied by some honest engagement with what the genuine approach actually requires. Not the approach that is easiest or most immediately comfortable or most compatible with the continuing participation in the existing systems that the dominant culture has organized around the production and the sale of the wrong kind of happiness, but the approach that the most careful and most honest examination of what genuine happiness actually is and what its genuine conditions actually require consistently identifies as genuinely productive. The first dimension of the genuine approach is what I want to call the cultivation of genuine presence, rather than the pursuit of positive states. This is not a technique in the narrow sense. It is not the application of a specific practice to the production of a specific result. It is the fundamental reorientation of one's relationship to one's own experience from the relationship of a person who is continuously evaluating the current state against the desired state and managing the gap between them, to the relationship of a person who is genuinely inhabiting the current state in all its genuine complexity and its genuine imperfection and its genuine mixture of positive and negative and neutral experience. The cultivation of genuine presence means, in practice, the deliberate decision to be actually in the experience you are actually having, rather than simultaneously in the experience you are having, and in the evaluation of whether the experience is adequate and in the management of the experience toward a more adequate version of itself. It means developing the specific capacity to notice what is actually happening in your own experience, including the genuinely difficult and the genuinely uncomfortable dimensions of it, without the immediate reactive movement toward correction that the management of experience most naturally produces. And it means developing the specific trust in the actual experience as genuinely worth inhabiting that the culture of pushing yourself to be happy specifically undermines through its continuous insistence that the current experience is inadequate and that the genuinely good experience is always somewhere else and always just ahead. The second dimension is the cultivation of genuine engagement rather than the pursuit of comfortable passivity. This means the specific and often deliberately countercultural choice to invest seriously in the activities and the relationships and the challenges that require genuine effort and genuine skill, and the specific quality of genuine absorption that genuine engagement produces, rather than organizing one's available time and energy around the consumption of the experiences and the entertainments and the social validations that the culture of immediate gratification most readily provides and that the research most consistently finds are associated with the shallowest and most transient forms of positive feeling rather than the deep and durable forms of genuine happiness. The cultivation of genuine engagement means, in practice, the specific decision to do difficult things, not for the sake of the difficulty itself, but for the sake of the specific quality of genuine aliveness that genuine challenge and genuine engagement with genuine challenge reliably produces. The development of a genuine skill in a domain that matters to you. The commitment to a genuine relationship with the specific demands and the specific rewards that genuine relationship requires. The engagement with the most difficult and most important questions of your own life with the specific quality of honest, patient, genuine inquiry that those questions deserve and that the culture of immediate answers and immediate comfort consistently prevents. The third dimension is the cultivation of genuine connection rather than the management of social performance. This means the specific investment in a small number of relationships of genuine depth and genuine quality, the specific commitment to being genuinely known by specific other people, in ways that require the willingness to be seen in one's full complexity and one's full vulnerability, rather than in the edited and curated and managed version that the digital social environment most naturally produces. And it means the specific choice to prioritize the quality of genuine encounter with specific other people over the quantity of social contact and social recognition that the dominant culture treats as the primary measure of social success. The fourth dimension is the cultivation of genuine meaning, rather than the optimization of immediate positive feeling. This means the specific engagement with the questions of what you genuinely care about and what genuinely matters to you, and what the specific contribution that your specific life is most genuinely positioned to make to the world you inhabit and to the people you love actually consists of, and the specific organization of your daily choices and your daily investments of time and energy and attention around those genuine answers rather than around the optimization of the specific forms of immediate positive feeling that the culture has made most immediately and most continuously available. The fifth dimension is perhaps the most counterintuitive and the most important. It is the cultivation of genuine acceptance of the full range of your own emotional experience, including the genuinely difficult and the genuinely painful dimensions of it, as legitimate features of a genuinely lived human life, rather than as problems requiring correction or evidence of insufficient happiness requiring more vigorous pursuit. This is not the passive resignation of a person who has given up on genuine happiness. It is the specific recognition that genuine happiness is not the elimination of negative experience, but the development of a relationship with the full range of experience, including the negative, that allows it to be genuinely inhabited rather than continuously managed and avoided. Now, I want to address directly the question that everything I have been saying is raising, but that the dominant culture is specifically organized to prevent from being asked honestly. The question of whether the approach I am describing, the approach of cultivating genuine presence and genuine engagement and genuine connection and genuine meaning and genuine acceptance, rather than pushing yourself toward the specific emotional states that the dominant culture promotes as the destination of the pursuit of happiness, is a genuinely accessible approach for the specific people navigating the specific conditions of the specific historical moment in which they find themselves. Because I am aware that the approach I am describing sounds, in its most schematic form, like advice that is most available to the people who are already in the most fortunate circumstances, whose basic material needs are adequately met, and whose external circumstances provide sufficient latitude for the kind of genuine choice and genuine engagement that the approach requires. And I am aware that for people whose external circumstances are genuinely constrained, whose material precarity and whose social marginalization and whose specific forms of external suffering are genuinely limiting the range of choices available, the advice to cultivate genuine presence and genuine engagement might sound like the counsel of someone who has the luxury of approaching happiness as a project of inner cultivation rather than a genuine struggle against genuinely inadequate external conditions. This concern is legitimate, and it deserves a genuine response rather than the evasion that the more comfortable version of the analysis would produce. The genuine response is not that external circumstances do not matter, because they do, and the genuine improvement of genuinely inadequate external circumstances is genuinely important and genuinely worth pursuing. The genuine response is that the specific approach to happiness that the dominant culture promotes, the approach of pushing yourself toward the specific emotional states that are supposed to arrive when the external circumstances have been sufficiently optimized, is not more available to the people with the most constrained external circumstances than the approach of cultivating genuine presence and genuine engagement and genuine meaning. It is less available because it requires continuous access to the specific forms of consumption and achievement and recognition that genuinely constrained external circumstances make most inaccessible. The approach I am describing, the approach organized around the inner cultivation of the specific conditions of genuine happiness, rather than the external optimization of the specific circumstances of its pursuit, is in many respects more available to the people whose external circumstances are most constrained, because it requires not the manipulation of external circumstances, but the development of inner capacities that are, in principle, accessible to anyone who is willing to invest seriously in their cultivation. And the research on genuine happiness across genuinely different external circumstances, including the research on people navigating genuinely severe external constraints, consistently finds that the people who are most genuinely happy in genuinely difficult circumstances are the people who have developed precisely the inner capacities we have been discussing. The capacities for genuine presence and genuine engagement and genuine meaning and genuine acceptance, rather than the people who are most successfully managing their external circumstances in the direction of the specific forms of positive feeling that the dominant culture promotes. I want to say something now about the specific historical moment in which this conversation is occurring, because the question of happiness in 2026 is not a question that can be adequately addressed without attending to the specific conditions that the current moment is producing and the specific challenges those conditions are presenting to the project of genuine human flourishing. The specific conditions of 2026, the conditions of accelerating technological transformation and dissolving collective frameworks, and the systematic colonization of human attention by systems specifically organized around the exploitation of the psychological vulnerabilities that the desire for happiness most reliably produces, are conditions that make the dominant culture's approach to pushing yourself to be happy not merely inadequate, but actively harmful in ways that previous eras' versions of the same approach were not. The tools available in 2026 for the production of the simulation of happiness, the AI systems, and the algorithmic platforms, and the pharmaceutical interventions, and the consumption options that can produce immediate positive feeling with increasing sophistication and increasing comprehensiveness, are tools that are becoming increasingly effective at producing the simulation while becoming increasingly consequential in their undermining of the genuine conditions of genuine happiness. The person who organizes their pursuit of happiness around the maximally effective use of the most sophisticated happiness simulation tools that 2026 makes available is not in the process of becoming more genuinely happy. They are in the process of becoming more thoroughly captured by systems that are specifically organized around the production of the experience of almost happiness, of the continuously refreshed sense of being on the verge of the happiness that the next engagement with the system will produce, without ever actually arriving at the genuine thing. And the specific cost of this capture, measured not in the currency of any economic accounting, but in the currency of the specific quality of genuine human life that is being traded for the simulation, is one of the most significant and most consistently underexamined costs of the current moment. The genuine alternative, the approach of cultivating the inner conditions of genuine happiness rather than pushing yourself toward the external circumstances of its simulation, is not merely a philosophical preference or a lifestyle choice in the neutral sense. In the specific conditions of 2026, it is the specific form of genuine resistance to the specific form of exploitation that the most powerful systems of the current moment are most comprehensively organized to perform. The person who has developed a genuine attentional sovereignty and genuine presence and genuine engagement and genuine connection and genuine meaning and genuine acceptance of the full range of their own experience is a person who is genuinely less susceptible to the specific mechanism through which the happiness simulation industry most effectively captures the people it is most interested in capturing. And the cultivation of this genuine resistance, this genuine inner capacity for genuine happiness, rather than its simulation, is one of the most important and most consistently neglected forms of genuine agency available in the specific conditions of the current moment. Throughout history, the people who have been most genuinely happy in the most genuinely difficult circumstances have shared certain characteristics that are worth attending to with the specific attention that the current conditions require. They were almost universally people who had developed a genuine and honest relationship with the full range of their own experience, who had not organized their inner life around the avoidance of the genuinely difficult dimensions of genuine human experience, but had developed the specific capacity to be genuinely present with those dimensions without being destroyed by them. They were people who had found genuine engagement with something genuinely challenging that required the genuine exercise of their genuine capacities, and that connected their specific effort to something genuinely meaningful beyond their own immediate experience of it. And they were people who had developed through the specific investment in the specific kinds of relationship and the specific kinds of community and the specific kinds of practice that genuine human flourishing requires, the specific quality of genuine belonging that the research most consistently identifies as the most reliable and most durable source of the deep and genuine happiness that the culture of pushing yourself to be happy is organized to simulate while systematically failing to provide. I want to close by returning to the question that the title of this conversation is posing, because the question deserves a genuine answer rather than the evasion that the entire analysis might be suggesting, but that would leave the most important thing unsaid. Should you push yourself to be happy? The genuine answer is yes, but not in the sense that the dominant culture intends when it delivers this instruction. Not in the sense of pushing yourself toward the specific emotional states and the specific external circumstances and the specific consumption of the specific happiness simulation products that the dominant culture has organized itself to provide and to promote. Not in the sense of treating your current experience as inadequate and your current emotional state as a problem requiring correction and your current circumstances as insufficient and your current level of happiness as evidence of a failure that requires more vigorous effort in the direction of the desired destination. In that sense, you should stop pushing yourself to be happy immediately and permanently, because the pushing in that direction is one of the most reliable available mechanisms for producing the genuine unhappiness it is ostensibly trying to correct. The sense in which you should push yourself to be happy is the sense of pushing yourself toward the genuine conditions of genuine happiness, which are not the conditions the culture is promoting and which require precisely the kind of genuine effort and genuine commitment and genuine willingness to engage with the genuinely difficult that the culture of easy happiness is specifically organized to make unnecessary. Push yourself toward genuine presence, toward the specific and demanding practice of actually being in the experience you are actually having rather than somewhere else in relation to it. Push yourself toward genuine engagement, toward the specific and demanding investment in activities and relationships and challenges that require the genuine exercise of genuine capacity. Push yourself toward genuine connection, toward the specific and demanding vulnerability of being genuinely known by specific other people in the full complexity and the full imperfection of what you actually are. Push yourself toward genuine meaning, toward the honest and demanding examination of what you actually care about, and the specific organization of your daily choices around those genuine answers. And push yourself, most importantly and most counterintuitively, toward genuine acceptance of the full range of your own experience, including the genuinely difficult and the genuinely painful and the genuinely uncertain and the genuinely sad, as the actual texture of a genuinely lived human life that is not a problem requiring correction but a reality worth genuinely inhabiting. This is the pushing toward happiness that produces genuine happiness, not the elimination of difficulty and the maximization of positive feeling and the optimization of external circumstances in the direction of the specific emotional states that the dominant culture has organized itself to produce and to sell. But the cultivation of the inner conditions, the genuine presence and the genuine engagement, and the genuine connection and the genuine meaning and the genuine acceptance that allow the genuine happiness to arise not as the product of its pursuit, but as the specific consequence of the genuine inhabiting of a genuinely lived human life. The happiness you are pushing yourself toward is not somewhere else. It is not waiting at the end of the next achievement, or the next purchase, or the next optimization, or the next engagement with the system that is most insistently offering to provide it. It is available here, in the specific quality of genuine engagement with the specific reality of your specific life, that the push toward somewhere else is most effectively preventing you from inhabiting. Stop pushing yourself to be happy in the way you have been taught to push yourself. Start pushing yourself to be genuinely present in the life you are actually living. The happiness will find you there. It always has. It always does. The only question is whether you will be there when it arrives.